We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car parked, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
Not speaking German in Germany can lead to low quality of life, limited opportunities and a sense of being an outsider. So to fully integrate and thrive in German society, language is so important. Language is essential.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, my dear listeners, welcome back again this wonderful week on Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, your host, Otako, and I'm always excited, always happy to be on this wonderful podcast and listen to and share my personal experiences, share my personal stories, or sometimes I have wonderful guests where I come and share my only experience with them, or maybe they also share their experiences with our dear listeners, and perhaps our listeners can learn or get something from whatever we share. Of course, I cannot say that everyone can learn something from my podcast, but at least you can hear a story, a unique story from someone else from around the world. But anyway, this week I want to share with you my personal experience. I want to talk about something that one of my listeners on this podcast asked me a question wrote to me and asked me a question, what it is like or whether it is so important for a migrant who is deciding to move to Germany to speak German as a language. But anyway, I want to share from my personal experience. I want to emphasize just how crucial it is to learn and speak German when you decide to move or live in Germany. Let me share with you my personal experience that really drove this point home for me. When I first moved to Germany, I had a basic understanding of the language, but I wasn't fluent by any means. I could just understand a little simple things about German as the language. But as I decided to live and stay in this country, which is called Germany, I realized that it is very important for me as a person to speak the language. As a result, I had a very interesting experience that I experienced personally. You see, I decided to take a training to be a pre-educator in a school for people who can learn how to work with young people in daycare centers, kindergartens, maybe homes of children and young people, or maybe generally to work with young people and children. However, as I decided to take this education, there was a requirement of having a German level of C1. That's the German speaking level of C1. So before someone takes this education, you are required to show some capacity of speaking German. So personally, I had not acquired the C1 level of German speaking. literally, I did not have the certificate that could prove my capacity of speaking the German language. So when I was in school in my second year, it was tight because the school had to write me letters. The school sent me information letters saying, you know what, it's okay, you're doing your Ausbildung, you're doing your training, but you need to have a German certificate of C1 level to speak German and also to write German. That level of writing and speaking German, which is C1, is not that easy to acquire. It is really difficult to pass the exam. To literally share with you and tell you the reality, the true story is that I did sit this exam C1. Unfortunately, I couldn't pass it like 5 times. It drove me crazy. I lost my love for the language. Every time I could see someone speaking about German, acquiring a certificate in German, it really stressed me off because I had tried all my hopes of getting this certificate. But unfortunately, I was failing. But one thing that I realized, I had no option. The school needed the C1 certificate. And me as Otako, I needed to prove to the school that, please, you don't have to cancel my education because of C1, and I'm going to write it. And if I pass it, I'll bring the certificate here. I was given deadlines, and deadlines were passing. I tried all options of escaping not to get the C1 certificate. My friend, if you are not living in German, one thing you do have to know about this country is that it's a country of papers. It is a country of documents. Literally, the school needed me to have a certificate, a simple document that proves that I have C1 level of German. And that's why I can do my education in Germany. I did not have that. That was a hit on my head. However much I could speak the language, I could communicate on the streets, I could share with people stories, I could talk with my teachers in the German language, I could exchange conversation with my colleagues in German language. But that was not proof that I can speak the language. However much I was working in my workplace and speaking the German language, that was never proof that you can speak the language. Because the school needed a simple document, a simple certificate that proves that you are at a level of speaking German language. You have the certificate which is called C1 level, TELC. If you don't know about this, you can Google it. It is a certified German certificate for people who are migrants living in Germany or living in any European country, whichever language, whether French or Spanish, you are required to have that kind of certificate that shows that you are at a level of that language to go into a university or maybe to go into a vocational training school. So, as time was hitting me by, I hoped for the best. The good thing is that when you don't give up, you achieve something. So, luckily enough, in the year 2023, I managed to get my certificate, my simple paper, the document that shows, Otako, you passed C1, and now you can speak the German language. And now you can continue with your education because you have the C1 German certificate. But all that time when I was suffering to get my language certificate, I couldn't do anything. I could not enjoy my work. I could not enjoy my school because I was always over pressure. I was in pressure. I was in stress. I was being pushed by the system that you need to show us that you are able to work here, you are able to study here, and what we only need from you, it is the certificate to speak the German language. Yes, of course, you can communicate with people in the in the streets. You can speak with people in the German language, but we need a proof. But I was happy at the end of the day when I got the proof to show them that I can speak the German language. So, my dear listeners, the person who really asked me this question, I can literally say that it is quite really important for you to speak the language. Because let me give you the positive things when you speak the language. You gain confidence. You are able to be confident, to be open, to understand, to speak, to share your feelings because you are able to speak the language. I mean, even just having a certificate of any level, it may be English, it may be German, it may be French, it may be Spanish, it may be any language that you are learning. The moment you have a certificate, you feel confident that, wow, I can speak this language and I'm going to communicate with people in this language no matter how much I speak. Right or wrong, I don't care. I have a certificate, I've passed it, I can speak it. So that confidence, now I have it. I just speak the language. When I decide to say, I'm now speaking German, I have to speak it. And I just speak freely because I have the positive feeling.
Enjoying this episode? Leave a review now.
Hear my true story.
I mean, if you know the language, there are so many things that you enjoy in the country. You get to learn about their cultures. You get to meet friends. You get to communicate with the people you live with. You also get to have chances of many opportunities of being employed wherever. But of course, that's not the main point. What I can share with you right now is the challenges. The moment you are deciding to come to Germany, you need to learn this language, speak it. If you are able to get the certificate, get it. Of course, the certificate doesn't mean that you have passed the German, you can speak it perfectly. Come on. I know guys who have these certificates, but they can't speak the language because they are talented maybe in writing and passing it. And maybe there are people who don't have these levels of speaking German certificates or any language, whatever you speak, and you don't have the certificates. It's not the end of the world because you can speak it. So the moment you can speak it, you can enjoy it, regardless of what you are doing. But for the people who are deciding to live in Germany as migrants, from my personal experience, and if I want to continue with education, if I want to get into a good career of employment, this is what I can tell you. You need the language. You need to speak the language. You need to know how to write the language. You need to be able to communicate in this language. There are challenges, of course. There are challenges that you can face, or there are difficulties that you can really meet or you can encounter if you are not able to communicate in the German language. You will not have chances of being employed because, many jobs in German require fluency in speaking German. And of course, if you don't speak the language, maybe you'll be restricted to roles that don't really require communication. Maybe you end up in jobs that really don't require communication. Maybe you're even not happy in these jobs because you can't speak the language, and then they push you to a certain job that you don't want to do. And that's where you find the difficulties if you're not speaking the language. The other thing that is the education. On my case, I survived. If I had not passed my German, I would not continue with my education in the vocational training which I'm doing as to become a... If I had not got my C1 level of German, I would not continue with my vocational training to become an educator. That's where it is. You can't go into any school that is requiring German as a language to study. You won't really find a school. Of course, there are those who are doing English courses. If you're in university, you're doing an English master's. Yeah, there you don't need the language. Maybe you don't need the German language in that kind of education. But most education chances in German institutions, it's really good. It is advisable to know the language, to speak the language, so that you can really enjoy your education time here in Germany. Another thing that people don't take serious is that when you don't speak the language, for example, if you are living here in Germany, you can be isolated. You find yourself in a situation where you are always isolated. You are limited to be integrative in the society. Because without the ability of communicating effectively in the language, you may find it challenging to find friends and maybe also to connect with the local community. So at the end of the day, you get this social isolation, which really can at a long time make you feel sick or perhaps going into depression because you don't have people share with your life, your stories, your challenges. That's why it is really important to understand the language. And another thing that if you know the language and you have decided to live in Germany, you kind of find it easier to deal with these administrative bureaucratic works. You know, the country that I know about that really likes sending letters, it is Germany. You see, when you are in Germany, the moment you come here and you have decided to live here, you'll start right away getting letters. And all these letters that are full of administration things that are required for you to live in the country, they are written in German. So when you are able to speak and also to understand these letters, then life can be so easy. Then you are able to deal with complex issues because you are able to see how to operate in German bureaucracy. Let me tell you, German likes bureaucracy. Everything you need to have a paper, and this paper is always either written in German, and everything is communicated in German. So that's how the language can really be a thing the moment you decide to say, you know what, I'm moving to Germany. I'm going to live in German. That's where the language becomes a super, super important thing. And there are so many other things that when you don't know, you can't speak the language, you will not be able to acquire. Perhaps, of course, you'll be limited to certain things. Let's talk about if you want to make an appointment with the doctor. You need to make an appointment with a medical profession in Germany. So you need to be able at least to communicate with them in German, so that you are able to really, really tell the doctor what is crucial, what medical situation that you are in. And perhaps if they explain to you, they're also able to explain to you in the German language. And there's something that also we don't really look at as really important is the culture and the recreation things, like going to music festivals, or maybe going to theaters, or maybe going to attend local events wherever you're living, So from my personal experience, I used always to like to go to theater when I was living in my home country. But when I moved to Germany in 2019, I realized, there are so many theater plays, but most of them were in German language. So I had always to choose which kind of theater, which kind of film do I go to, which kind of play am I going to, which kind of event, what are they going to be speaking. If you're lucky, you are in a town which has more international people. Perhaps it has a university. There you find that there are some events that are really targeting internationals. But if you're not in such towns, you'll find yourself that most event theaters, musical plays, if you're going to films, all the things, they're in the German language. And then if you're not able to understand or speak the language, then you end up yourself limiting yourself because you can't attend a play because you can't understand what they're talking about. If they make a joke, other people laughing, you are not laughing, you're not understanding it. So personally, that pushed me a bit in 2019, 2020 to limit myself in engaging myself in the theater events and that. But now I speak the language, I understand the language here in German, so I at least attend such events. So language can also really be important in the terms of culture events or maybe recreation events that really you don't need to limit yourself. And of course, the best day-to-day work, if you speak the language, you're able to deal with day-to-day communication on the streets, at home. If you have kids, you're going to the care center, you can communicate with workers, or maybe you are going for shopping, you can decide what to buy, what not to buy, because you know the language, you can really communicate well, you can really ask someone, okay, this and this, I need this. You want to book, you want to book train tickets, you can understand which kind of ticket am I buying. Maybe you are traveling from one part of Germany to another part of Germany. You are able to know these train connections because you understand the language. Yeah, there's an experience I had from a friend of mine because he didn't know the language, the German language. So he ended up missing his next stop of the train. And so instead of getting off from the next to the stop that is right for him, he ended up getting off at a wrong stop just because the person who was communicating in the train used a language that he did not understand. And then he got off from the wrong stop. So these are simple things, but when you know the language, you can really enjoy your freedom of really moving from one place to another because you can communicate well. Another thing that people need to pay attention to is that when you're not able to speak the language, you may not be able to deal with certain issues like discrimination and stereotyping. If you don't know the language, if you are discriminated, if you are stereotyped, you can't speak for yourself, you can't defend yourself. You definitely end up in a situation where you can't even know what is wrong, what is happening, what is someone saying. When some individuals who don't speak German, they cannot understand that they are facing discrimination or stereotypes. And at the end of the day, you end up feeling yourself being excluded because, yes, you are being discriminated, you are being stereotyped, and then you are excluded. You are facing these prejudices in all this situation of day-to-day life. But you can't know that someone is doing that in a wrong way and they are not supposed to do that. And because you don't speak the language, you cannot even defend yourself. You cannot speak out your voice. You cannot say, no, you know what you said is wrong. You don't have to say such a statement. You don't have to say such a statement to me. I can tell you, personally, when I came in Germany in 2019, because I was not speaking fluent German, I could not understand certain things. So even when I was facing this discrimination and stereotypes, I could not understand them. But now that I really know the language, I can say, no, please, the statement you said is not right. I wish you understand that this is not right so that you don't say it again. That's how it happens. One time I experienced when someone talked a very racist statement and I was like, okay, should I tell this person, yes, what you said is wrong, it's not right? And that's how I stood up. I told the person, please, what you said is wrong and that's not right. And for that reason, stop it. Because I knew how to speak the language.
With you every week. Hear my true story.
overall, not speaking German in Germany can lead to low quality of life, limited opportunities, and a sense of being an outsider. So to fully integrate and thrive in German society, language is so important. Language is essential. Therefore, for you to fully integrate and thrive in German society, language is so important. You need, as a person, to really invest time and effort in learning German to overcome certain challenges and also to make the most of your experiences in German. To enjoy it, you need to invest in the language. That is my experience. And as I share with you right now, if you ask me a question, how was my living in Germany in 2019? And how is my living in Germany right now in the year 2023? When I can speak really good German language, when I can really communicate well with people, I can tell you right now that I am enjoying my time because I'm able to communicate in the language. And guess what? I'm multilingual. I can speak German, I can speak English, I can speak Lusoga, I can speak Luganda, I can speak many other languages. And for that reason, I keep playing around with language. And also, I have enjoyed learning the culture. For those who are thinking of maybe coming to Europe or maybe to live in Germany, maybe you have got something to learn from my personal experience. And for my dear listeners who have been following Hear My True Story podcast, thank you for always supporting Hear My True Story podcast. And if you want to be part of the supporters of the podcast, go to hearmytruestory.com and therefore subscribe. You can decide to be a monthly contributor with any penny you have. And for those who are listening for the first time, this is Hear My True Story podcast where we share personal stories, personal experiences. Yes, if you have enjoyed today's podcast, feel free to subscribe on any podcast streaming platform so that you can be able to enjoy our next coming episodes. And my dear listeners, it has been me, Otako, your host. And I would like to say bye for now. Thank you for always supporting Hear My True Story podcast.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear My True Story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.